Alright, hey guys, welcome back to another video. So this is going to be a fun one. This is actually my first time ever making a tier list with the Tier Maker website, and I was kind of just getting excited as I normally do around new console launches, thinking about the Switch 2 and some of my favorite console launches over the years, and I thought, man, it would be really fun to make my first tier list that I make my favorite console launches over the years. And for me personally, I really started remembering and being involved in console launches with the sixth generation onwards. So for the purpose of this tier list, I am limiting it to the sixth generation consoles and up. So, starting with like Dreamcast, PS2, Xbox, GameCube, and on. But maybe in the future, I can do one talking about my opinions on some of the older console launches, even if I may not have had those consoles in the launch window. I might be able to still talk about them. But anyway, so how I'm going to be doing this is I'm going to be using this website here, which is fandom.com, which has a really comprehensive list of all of the launch games. I will be basing this off of the US launch games because, well, I'm in the US. So I do apologize if you're, basing your tier list off of, say, like the European launches. But for me, I'll be basing it off of the US launch games. And as you can see here, for my tier list, I have the PS3. And I was involved. If there's a console on here, I was involved with the launch. Like I either got it for the launch of the console or not too long after. Um, enough, essentially soon enough so that I definitely can have an opinion on the launch experience and the launch games that were available for these consoles. So we got the PS3, the PS4, the PS5, the PS2, the Xbox 360, the Xbox One, the Xbox Series X, the Xbox, the Switch, the Wii U, the Wii, GameCube, Dreamcast, PSP, the DS, the PS Vita, the N-Gage, the 3DS, and the Game Boy Advance. So, what do you say we get started here? I know some of the spacing on some of these is a little weird and awkward, but this is my first time using the site. I pretty much just grabbed images of the consoles and threw them on here. So, what do you say we get started? The way I'm going to do it is we're going to just go through the order in which they're listed on the site. So, the first one in chronological order, starting with the sixth generation, would be the Dreamcast. So Japan actually only had 4 launch games, but the US had a lot, way more launch games. And in my opinion, I always loved the Dreamcast launch. I got the Dreamcast a few months after. I got it actually for Christmas in 1999. Super memorable, one of the most amazing Christmases ever for me, because who wouldn't want to get a Dreamcast on Christmas Day? And I got a copy of Sonic Adventure. And not too long after that, using, whatever money I got for Christmas, I picked out a few more games. And the games that I personally picked out were House of the Dead 2, with a light gun, of course. And then I took a chance on Power Stone. I actually didn't really know much about Power Stone. I just liked the cover, and I went with it, and it ended up being one of my favorite launch games ever. It was just such an amazing game. I rented Soul Calibur, and that was my launch experience. And then I would go on to play a lot of these other games over time. Really wish I would have played Blue Stinger sooner. But for me to make a tier list out of these, I will be taking into account the full list, even games that I haven't played, as long as it's like a nice variety of genres. How good were the games? Just how much of a selection did you have for your consoles when they first launched? And in my opinion, the Dreamcast has got to be either an A tier or S tier, because first of all, getting a brand new 3D Sonic game was like magical. That was like the N64 launching with Mario 64. This was a huge deal. So we had all genres represented. We had racing games, we had fighting games. I mean, Pen Triathlon also in the racing games. We had sports games, actually a lot of racing games now that you look at it. Um, and even survival horror with Blue Stinger and flight games. It was a really solid launch, and I think you would be able to find something for everybody. Now, of course, I am a little bit biased. I love Sonic Adventure. I was a big Sonic fan. So is this really worthy of S tier? And in my mind, when I go back and I think about all of the other consoles that are coming up, as much as I would love to put every console in S tier, I gotta be pretty strict here. So it's got a lot of different genres. It's got a lot of good games. But is Sonic Adventure, Power Stone, Soul Calibur? Ooh, man. I mean, I'm not as big of a Soul Calibur fan as some people are, but that was like for the longest time thought of as one of the greatest games of all time. The reviews on that game were just out of this world. So when you take into consideration stuff like that, man, I really, for now, things might move around, but I'm really feeling like the Dreamcast with Sonic Adventure, Power Stone, and Soul Calibur, even House of the Dead 2, I think deserves to be up there. And I know a lot of people, I myself for a long time, actually thought Crazy Taxi was a launch game, but it wasn't. That came not too long after. For now, we're going to put it in S tier, but I might bump this around, like I said, as we go. So think organically, if you want to spoil things, yeah, you can jump to the end, but what's the fun in that, right? Let's see the process. Let's see how I move things around. But for now, it's going to be an S tier. All right, so moving on, we go to the PlayStation 2. Now, every time I talk about, first of all, look at this. Look at the Japanese launch. The selection of games here, right? Not a bad selection. Eternal Ring, personal favorite of mine. They got Kessen, Ridge Racer 5, Street Fighter. Look at the US, like, you can't even fit it all on one page. It's huge. Now, not every game on the PS2 launch was an amazing game, right? There were a lot of very like 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 kind of games. But when I think of the PS2 launch, I always just think about the variety. There was something here for everybody. You had a console launch that had multiple RPGs, unique platform exclusive RPGs. So let's break this down a bit. You had mech combat with Armored Core 2. You had Dead or Alive. You had Dynasty Warriors 2, a personal favorite launch game of mine. This is one of the earliest. This was actually my first PS2 game that I ever played, and I was very impressed with the characters on screen, as I'm sure a lot of people were. Eternal Ring I would not play for many years later, but playing it now, it's actually one of my new favorite PS2 games. I did speedruns of this and everything. I love Eternal Ring. What a fantastic selection of just weird. First of all, shoutouts to From Software getting 1, 2, 3 games out, right? Yeah, they got 3 games out. That's just wow. Props to them. Evergrace. So you had your first person RPGs, you had your third person RPGs, you had the classic Fantavision, a puzzle game that was very different. A lot of people just remember this as like the Fireworks game, but it's actually a very solid puzzle game. I think you should go back and check it out and play it again if you haven't. Gun Griffin Blaze, another mech combat game, which is actually pretty good from Working Designs. Kessen, I was never the biggest fan of. I rented it, and I remember thinking it was going to be more like Dynasty Warriors 2, which it wasn't. Kessen 3 actually ended up being more like a Dynasty Warriors game, funny enough. But, I mean, it had strategy. It had tons of sports games with Madden, racing with Midnight Club. Orphan, which is also another RPG, a bit more of a different take on an RPG, but I mean, it was like an anime RPG. You had billiards, you had Ready to Rumble, you had Ridge Racer back when Ridge Racer games were still a thing. Silent Scope for some arcadey shooting action. Smuggler's Run, one of my favorite launch games for any console ever. I love Smuggler's Run, just driving around, not even doing the missions, just taking in the amazing draw distance that game gave you. Such a stunning game for the time. SSX, SSX was always lauded as one of the best games on the PS2 launch. I rented it and enjoyed it, but it wasn't one of my like top of the top. Street Fighter EX3, a great rental game for me. Summoner, which was mind blowing at the time for how big of scale this game was. It was a port from PC, but it was actually visually very impressive despite the frame rate issues that it would have on the PS2. You had a golf game, you had Tekken Tag, you had Time Splitters, another classic first-person shooter, Unreal Tournament, Wild Wild Racing, and X Squad. Like, guys, I don't know how you can look at this and not be impressed by, I think every genre of video games that existed at the time was on the PS2 with multiple different ones, right? I think the only one that wasn't represented more than once was Puzzle, which would have been Fantavision. I mean, wow. This to me has always been, and this was like the inspiration for even wanting to do this tier list. The PS2 launch, while yeah, there weren't a lot of 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10 games, the amount of variety and good games, not amazing games, but good games was just, I don't think we've really seen anything like it since. So for that reason, I have to put the PS2 in S tier, and it's got to go above the Dreamcast for now. So if there is like a hierarchy, stuff on the left will be considered higher, right? So the PS2 would be higher than the Dreamcast. Love the PS2 launch. Anytime I get excited for new consoles coming out, I always just think back to the magical time of the PS2. And while I didn't get it day one, I got it very soon after, and was able to experience the magic of like renting these early launch games and picking up a few of them as well. So coming up after that, we've got the GameCube. Once again, Japan, of course, it comes out sooner, and we have a little bit more time here to get games out, but US launch was pretty solid. We had All-Star Baseball, Batman Vengeance, Crazy Taxi, Dave Mirra Freestyle, Tarzan. Some of these I don't even remember being launch games on the GameCube. But here's the big ones: Luigi's Mansion, Rogue Squadron 2, Monkey Ball, and Wave Race. And then you had Tony Hawk and you had NHL hits. But every time I think of the GameCube launch, these four games always immediately come to mind. Just such an amazing selection of different games. I was a huge fan of Wave Race, Monkey Ball, Rogue Squadron, and Luigi's Mansion. I think every game brought something different and unique to the table visually, gameplay wise. I mean, they were pushing the console to its limits for the launch. Luigi's Mansion always looked fantastic with its lighting and shadows. Rogue Squadron 2, I just could never stop staring at the ships in this game and how the light and shadows with the sunsets and sunrises just reflected off of your X-Wing. It looked amazing. The water effects, the explosions. Monkey Ball, with just how smooth the frame rate was moving and everything was just so sleek and shiny. And then you had Wave Race, which had some of the most beautiful water effects ever seen in the game. So I do realize that the GameCube, outside of that small selection of games that, let's be honest here, were the highlights. There's Tony Hawk, but we're talking exclusives here for GameCube especially. It is just four games, and while I did put the Dreamcast pretty high up for just having a small selection of really good games, the Dreamcast also did have a really big selection of all types of genres. The GameCube launch was a little smaller in scale, even though it had a few really good games. So for that reason, for now, I'm going to have the GameCube in the A tier. I don't think it's quite S tier material, despite having some really, really solid games. And let me know in the comments below, would you put GameCube in S tier? Would you put it in B tier? Maybe you're not a big fan of those games. Maybe it's even lower for you. Let me know what you guys would do with certain consoles that you maybe don't agree with my placement. All right, moving on. We had the original Xbox. It's funny to look at the Japanese launch lineup here. Oh, they had Silent Hill too. Okay. They had a pretty solid launch lineup. Anyway, this is for the US launch. So we had 4x4, Evo, Air Force, Delta Storm, Arctic Thunder, Cell Damage. I love Cell Damage. I actually personally picked that up on the GameCube eventually. Man, I love that game. It does make me wish I would have played it on the original Xbox though first. Dark Summit, Dead or Alive 3, Fusion Frenzy, Halo. Mad Dash Racing, personal favorite of mine. Madden NASCAR, two NASCAR games. Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that. NFL, NHL, Oddworld, Munch's Odyssey, which I wasn't the biggest fan, but even if some of these games I wasn't the biggest fan, I will recognize at least like what that game brought to the console for the launch in terms of variety and what other people thought of it. Project Gotham Racing, that was a pretty big one. Shrek, Test Drive, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2X, and Trans World Surf. So obviously the big elephant in the room here is you had Halo. That was a big, big deal back in the day. So I think pretty much everybody that picked up an Xbox got Halo. I was a little bit different though. When I got my Xbox, I actually rented Halo. And I was like, this is cool. But I actually didn't buy Halo until probably like a couple years later when it was on sale and GameStop used. I enjoyed renting and playing through Halo for the single player, and that was that for me when I got my Xbox. I was more excited for stuff like Mad Dash Racing, and trying out Oddworld, even though it wasn't really for me. And by then, I think there were a few more original Xbox games out. Like I bought my Xbox for Morrowind. Essentially, I read it in the official Xbox magazine, and I'm like, that's it. It's time to get the Xbox. This is exactly the moment I've been waiting for. I need this game right now. So Morrowind was my reason. So I did have a little bit of a buffer period for there to be a few more games, but because at the time I had to pick between getting an Xbox and a GameCube, and I chose the GameCube first. Couldn't get them both right at the same time. I remember waiting in line to get the GameCube. That was the first time I ever waited in line for a game console ever, was for the GameCube launch, and it was worth every second out in the cold. So Halo alone will definitely have to have this pretty high in the tier list. Now, this is my personal tier list, so I'm trying not to rank these too generally like what the consensus is among people. This is my personal tier list, so some of you might be a little surprised by where I place some of these. And as hard as Halo and stuff like Project Gotham Racing should carry this in its placement, I am going to choose to put the Xbox in the B tier. Halo's cool and all, but I'm not a Halo mega fan, so sorry Xbox fans. Okay, moving on. Next up would be the 7th generation Xbox 360. We had Amped 3, Call of Duty 2, Condemned, which I played. It was a creepy game. I remember playing the demo for this, and I was like, man, I can't do this. This game's too scary. And I didn't play it until a few years ago, and man, what a fantastic horror game this was. So I will take that into consideration. You had FIFA, you had Gun, Cameo Elements of Power, fantastic launch game. I love those like really magical, colorful platformers that manage to make console launches. They're my favorites. You had some sports games, you had Need for Speed, Perfect Dark Zero, King Kong. Now, King Kong is a big one for me because this is the first time I ever saw the Xbox 360 in action. I remember I was in like, it was probably a Kmart or something, I don't know at the time. And I remember they had a demo unit set up for the 360, and King Kong was playing on this little HD TV, probably like in 720p most likely. And I remember just seeing that game running, and it was when you were being chased by the T-Rex early in the game with the thunder and the lightning and the rain and the shadows, and it looks so amazing. I'm like, whoa, how can graphics ever get better than this? And I always thought that King Kong was a fantastic launch game to show the capabilities of the graphical power of the Xbox 360. And it's also a great game. You had Project Gotham Racing 3, Quake 4, Ridge Racer 6, Tiger Woods, and Tony Hawk's American Wasteland. So I got the 360 very soon after launch. I tried to get it on launch day. It was sold out, so I had to wait about a month or so. I picked it up in the cold of December, waited out in line for like almost 24 hours, worth every second once again. I really miss those launch day, waiting in line out in the freezing cold to get consoles. It's just, we'll never really have those moments ever again with ordering everything online now. So out of these games, the games that I played at launch or very close, so I either picked it up or I rented it. I played Amp 3, Call of Duty 2, Gun, Cameo, Perfect Dark Zero, King Kong, Quake 4, Ridge Racer 6, and American Wasteland. So I played a lot of games, and I loved all of them. The biggest highlights here for me were Call of Duty 2. I played Call of Duty 2 online a ton, amazing game. Cameo as well, and I did play a lot of Perfect Dark Zero online. King Kong, of course, I had a lot of fun with. I played a lot of Quake 4, actually. I was pretty good at that game. Ridge Racer 6, put in like over 100 hours into it. Loved playing the online. I 100% did the single player, or I think I left off with like, no, I think I got the achievement for it. Well, either way, I played a ton of Ridge Racer 6 and American Wasteland, which I also loved. So once again, similar to the PS4 or the PS2 launch, huge variety of genres here. And a lot of the games are good. A lot of the games are not 10 out of 10, similar to the PS2. There's a lot of 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 kind of games here. And how could I forget Need for Speed Most Wanted? Oh my goodness. And Gun. Oh, I forgot them because they were a different color. Yeah, Gun was a great game. I really enjoyed playing Gun, and Need for Speed Most Wanted was amazing. Oh my goodness. And that also looked really good on the 360 at the time. I remember there were other versions of the game, but the 361 really stood out. I remember the road textures and the lighting on the roads with like the water reflections and stuff looked really nice. But we're forgetting something. Xbox Live. Xbox Live really took off with the Xbox 360 launch, with everybody playing online, coming bundled with the headset, everybody playing and talking. The Xbox Live arcade games. This isn't even including the Xbox Live arcade games. Let's not forget Hexic HD, Gauntlet, those early retro style arcade games that launched with online multiplayer. I remember playing Joust and playing Pac-Man and competing for like high scores online. It like just the combination of the arcade with the Xbox Live and these launch games. Xbox 360 is just, it's got to be up in the S. There is absolutely no way. Right now, I'm going to put it obviously above the Dreamcast. But man, battling it out here for if PS2 or 360 is better. Man. For me personally, since this is a personal tier list, I'm actually going to move the 360 in front of the PS2. Because for me, the 360 launch was way more memorable. I guess because I was involved from day one, I had that waiting in line experience. I had the playing online experience. The PS2 I got a little bit afterwards, so I wasn't like waiting in a line. A lot of the launch games I played at a later date, than I would have originally if I had picked it up on launch. So 360 for right now is on the top of the list. Moving on down. Oh, they actually did list the Xbox Live Arcade. That's cute. So yeah, this will remind me. Bejeweled, Gauntlet. Man, I played the heck out. Oh my, who could forget Geometry Wars? Yeah, Hexic HD Classics, Joust I played online. Mutant Storm Reloaded, that's a classic. Yeah, it's got to be up there. The PS3. Oh boy, here's where things start getting interesting. So we had Call of Duty 3, Genji, Days of the Blade, the infamous meme game with the giant crab, Madden, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, Mobile Suit Gundam Crossfire, which I played many, many, many years later. I actually wish I bought this game or rented it at least when the PS3 first came out, but I avoided it because the reviews were so bad. But I really wish I had played it sooner because I played it several years ago and really liked it. It's a very slow paced Gundam game, but if you prefer your Gundam games to kind of play like you're actually in a very slow big mech instead of like zooming around like crazy with like jetpacks and everything, it's a lot more methodical. And the damage that you do, like you're chopping off arms, you're chopping off weapons, you're chopping off the heads of the mechs. There's some really cool damage kind of effects in this game. I really enjoyed Crossfire, but the frame rate is really bad. It can dip below like 10 frames at times. I mean, it's pretty abysmal. Need for Speed Carbon, a couple of sports games, The Resistance, Fall Man, Ridge Racer 7, Tony Hawk, Untold Legend, Dark Kingdom. So the sad thing about the PS3, it was supposed to launch with MotorStorm in the US, and then that got delayed. I was very much looking forward to MotorStorm coming out as a launch game. It desperately needed something like that, but it wasn't there. And all we really had at the end of the day, in my opinion, was Resistance. Resistance really carried the PS3 launch. If it wasn't for Resistance, I really feel like the PS3 launch would be almost at the bottom of this tier list. Resistance was a great game. I played it online a lot. Definitely carried my enthusiasm for the PS3 because without that game, I'm not sure what I would have done for months. And don't forget, after the PS3, there was like nothing coming out for the PS3 for a long time. So this was pretty much all you had. So I had fun with Resistance and Ridge Racer 7, even though I preferred Ridge Racer 6 over Ridge Racer 7. I rented Untold Legends. I just couldn't get into it. And that was pretty much it. Even Genji, I rented. It was like, it was okay. I mean, this launch was very lacking. These games were also, there were very few exclusives here. You had Gundam, you had Resistance, you had Ridge Racer 7, which essentially was like a better like an improved version of Ridge Racer 6, but I didn't think so, especially because I don't even think it let you use microphones to talk to people online, and Ridge Racer 6 did. This one, this one's going to hurt a little bit, but I'm going to put the PS3 in the C tier. If Resistance was not part of the launch lineup, it probably would have been D tier. I'm sorry, PS3. All right, moving on here. Oh, and I like how it reminds me too. I like this list. This website's pretty good. I'll have a link to this in the description of the video, by the way, if you want to reference this yourself. So apparently PlayStation Network in the US only had Blast Factor and Cash Guns Chaos for the launch. Interesting. I did not pick up either of those, I don't think. The Wii. Okay, now this is a very contentious one, and I'm sure a lot of you are going to be very curious where I might put the Wii on my tier list here, because some people really hated the Wii launch lineup. So let's go through it. We had Avatar: The Last Airbender, Call of Duty 3, Cars, DBZ, Budokai Tenkaichi 2, Excite Truck, Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. I don't even remember some of these being a launch game like that one. GT Pro Series, which I played many years later, and it was actually a cute little racing game, arcade racer with cel shaded graphics that has really slippery controls. I played it with the motion controls, like, moving the controller, and if you play it that way, it's actually kind of fun. It makes me wish that I would have picked it up for the launch. I think I would have enjoyed it. But paying full price, I don't know if I would have. I think I would have preferred Excite Truck. But if you ever wrote off the GT Pro Series game, that's the one that came bundled with the steering wheel. Go back and try it. It's super cheap now. I think if you like arcade racers, you'll kind of enjoy it, especially if you like drifting. Happy Feet, Zelda Twilight Princess, Madden, Marvel, Monster 4x4, Need for Speed Carbon, Rampage Total Destruction, Rayman, Raving Rabbids, Red Steel. I'm a fan of Red Steel. SpongeBob, Monkey Ball, Banana Blitz, Tony Hawk's Downhill Jam, Trauma Center. Wow, I forgot it launched with Trauma Center, and Wii Sports. So let me go through the ones that I picked up for the Wii launch. I waited in line 24 hours for the Wii, out in the freezing cold with hand warmers and sleeping bags, and it was amazing. It was one of the last best console launches that I was a part of. I will never forget the Wii launch. Such good memories, and we're almost coming up now on 20 years. Wow, that is wild. So I played Excite Truck. I loved Excite Truck. I thought it was a really, really fun launch game. Very simple, but it really gave you a sense of the motion controls of the Wii, and I really enjoyed the motion controls for the launch of the Wii. I was a fan of the gimmick at the time. It was new, it was exciting, it was a whole new way to play games. So I was not, I'm not docking any points here for the Wii launch because it had a lot of waggle games. Twilight Princess, of course. I mean, I think we got to give the Wii some credit here for launching with the Zelda game. Even though this was, not exactly exclusive, it was still very exciting to play a new Zelda game on a new Nintendo console for the launch of the console, even if it had waggle control or motion controls. Um, Rayman Raving Rabbids. I was actually a fan of Rayman Raving Rabbids. I'm a little sick of the Rabbids at this point. I wish they would just go away. I'm kind of tired of them. But for a launch game, even though it borrowed the Rayman name when it really probably shouldn't have, I thought it was a very, very fun minigame compilation that did a really good job of demonstrating the motion controls of the Wii. I kind of think of it like Astro's Playroom today for like PlayStation, demoing the DualSense controller. In a way, I always thought Raving Rabbids was like a good demo of the Wii technology. And Red Steel. A lot of people hated Red Steel. I actually really, really enjoyed it. It was a solid like 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 kind of experience for me. I thought it looked pretty good as well. I know it wasn't like super graphically impressive when it came to comparing it to the, its counterparts, but I really liked the janky motion controls of like hitting stuff with the sword, swiping it around, waggling it around. The aiming, I think I really liked it most for the aiming the Wii remote at the TV. I thought it was a fun experience. It's not something that I really ever revisited. Actually, it's been a long time since I played Red Steel, but I thought it was a really solid addition to the launch lineup. And then Trauma Center, I think I ended up, I don't think I picked that up at launch, maybe, or did I buy it used? I can't remember. And then Wii Sports. Wii Sports, of course, was, I guess you can say that's the better demonstration over Raving Rabbids of the motion controls, but Wii Sports was a phenomenon. Like, that was one of the reasons that the Wii did as many sales as it did. And I don't think, as much as you might want to hate on Wii Sports, that game really changed the course of the like history of gaming for quite some time. Getting grandmas and parents and grandpas up off the couch playing video games for the first time since their childhood, and you have Wii Sports to thank for that. So that game was pivotal and very important, and it was a fun packet inclusion with the Wii. So I had a lot of fun with the Wii launch. Looking at this, it had a really wide variety of different genres and games. Really good for, there's something here for everybody in the family. But it is just a small selection of good games. So I don't think it's quite deserving. No, it's definitely not S tier. It's definitely not better than the GameCube launch. Is it better than the Xbox launch? And I think it is. I think I had a lot more fun playing the Wii games and the variety and just the new exciting. Is it worthy of A tier? Is it just a high B tier? I'm thinking it's a high B tier. I enjoyed the launch. It was just a very exciting launch that I don't think is quite ready to be up right next to the GameCube, just because the four big hitters on the GameCube are like leaps and bounds better than whatever the Wii had to offer. So I think for now we're going to keep it B. All right. Moving on here, we have... Oh, here's the Virtual Console games, but whatever. That's not really a factor too much for me. I don't think I played around with too many of those. We're moving on to the 8th generation. Now, handhelds, I think, come after this. We'll do handhelds after. The Wii U. Wow. And I mean, wow. Oh my goodness. The Wii U launch in the US was huge. It didn't feel this way, that is for sure. Assassin's Creed 3, Batman Arkham City, Ben 10, Call of Duty Black Ops 2, Chasing Aurora, which was my personal favorite Wii U launch game. I actually really liked that game. It was a cool little downloaded indie game. I met the developers at like a PAX event. Really cool game. Darksiders 2, Epic Mickey 2, ESPN, some sports games, Funky Barn, which ended up being like one of the more rare games on the Wii U for a bit. Game Party Champions. This is just so much fluff. I think the Wii U has like the biggest list of launch games and like the smallest list of ones that you actually wanted to play. Just Dance 4, Little Inferno, Madden NFL 13, Mass Effect 3, Mighty Switch Force, Nanosalt Neo, which was a pretty cool game. They had some pretty cool download games, I will give them that. NBA, Mario, New Super Mario Brothers U. I'm not the biggest fan of New Super Mario Brothers, but it is always a good thing when you get a Mario game with a launch of your console. Ninja Gaiden 3, Nintendo Land, Rabbids Land. I don't even think I bother with Rabbids Land. Scribblenauts, Sing Party, Skylanders Giants, Sonic All-Stars Racing Transform. A lot of these games are also multi-platform, so it's not like it's an exclusive. Tank Tank Tank, one of the, probably like the next best Wii U launch game for me. It was just a fun arcade game that I had played in the arcade first, and then I played the Wii U version, and I was very disappointed that there was no online multiplayer because that game really needed it. Tekken Tag Tournament, Transformers Prime, Trine 2, Warriors Orochi 3 Hyper, Wipeout 3, Year Shape. The best launch game, though, now that I've played it, I was a little too scared to play it back. I'm not going to lie. I was a little, like, the game was creepy. Zombie U, by far, leaps and bounds above pretty much all these other games, in my opinion. Zombie U not only was a fantastic survival horror game once I eventually played it on the PS4, but it made great, excellent use of the gamepad with your inventory. It was fantastic. So I will give it some points for Zombie U, but not many points. So for me personally, it was a very empty launch. It was one of the most depressing launches I ever went to, because this was around the time where you kind of had to pre-order to go pick up your consoles without just getting in line, first come, first serve. So I waited in line to pick it up after pre-ordering it. I was next to somebody in line that was only picking it up to scalp it and try and make money, which I don't think they had much success with, because the Wii U was like not really something people were scalping, because you couldn't really get rid of them for much more than retail. Wow, yeah, this is quite the exhaustive list, and not a lot of notable games. So Wii U, it ain't looking good. I'm gonna put the Wii U. Is it worse than the PS3? Does Resistance really carry that much weight? Another thing that I have to consider is, the Wii U, I streamed the launch, so I do have some memories where I pick these consoles up and I come home and I'm excited to like stream them, play them with my community, and like check out the launch games with everybody else. So that does carry a little bit more weight, and that's not something that I did with the PS3. So that does matter a little bit here for the Wii U. Tank Tank Tank, Zombie, Mario Brothers, couple of digital games. Is that better than Ridge Racer and Resistance? Man, I mean, Resistance is good. But even Zombie U, I mean, it wasn't part of my personal launch experience. Oh man. You know what? I'm going to put the Wii U under the PS3, because I think Resistance carries it that hard for me. At least Resistance was a game that I played for a few months after it came out. I wasn't playing any of these Wii U games for a few months after this thing came out. So I think Resistance is really going to carry that hard. Wii U, bottom of C tier for now. All right, moving on here to the next console. It's going to be the PS4. PS4, they're, of course, grouping digital games in here as well, I believe. So we've got Angry Birds Star Wars, Assassin's Creed 4, Battlefield 4, Blacklight Retributions, Call of Duty Ghosts, Contrast, DC Universe Online, FIFA Flower. Oh, that's right, they did launch Flower on the PS4 as a digital game. Okay, I kind of forgot that. Not that it matters, it's really a PS3 game. Killzone Shadowfall, Knack, that's going to carry some weight. Lego Marvel Superheroes, Madden, NBA, Need for Speed Rivals, Resogun, Skylanders Swap Force, Sound Shapes, Super Motherload, The Playroom, Trine 2, and Warframe. You know what's crazy here? Warframe is still around and kicking and more popular than ever. Who would have ever thought that? I played Warframe for like, checking my profile, I think it was like 15 to 20 hours, and I thought it was cool, but man, I would have never thought Warframe would still be around like over a decade later. Very impressive. The PS4 launch was, once again, obviously something I streamed and played with other people, but outside of a few games here, Knack carried the PS4 launch for me, and I'm not trolling. You guys know me, I love my 3D platformers. Knack literally carried the PS4 launch for me. The game wasn't perfect, okay? The story was boring in my opinion. It just didn't have enough comedy. It was a little too serious, but Knack was that quintessential console launch game. It was my favorite type of launch game. Something simple, something flawed, but something fun, something exciting for your new console, something simple with nice graphics. Knack had some really impressive particle effects and reflections and colors, and it just looked the part for a brand new game for a brand new console. And I always gave Knack credit for that. If it wasn't for Knack, the PS4 would be one of the lowest. I mean, it's down there, but it may even be below what I think is going to be my lowest console on this tier list. So, yes, there was Killzone Shadowfall. However, the downside to this was I played it, I wasn't into it. Played it online for a bit, played the single player, and I decided that this was the moment where I needed a break from first person shooters, and Killzone Shadowfall was the confirmation of that for me. So it really just put me into a bit of a hiatus from playing first person shooters. So that game didn't help me much at all. And looking at this list here, I mean, man, I really didn't play much of these at all. I picked up Need for Speed Rivals, which was, it's fun, but it's not gonna move this up the tier list at all. Wow. Warframe. Am I really gonna place this based on knack? Oh my goodness. However, I think in this instance, I have to look at the overall picture here, right? So there were a lot of games on here. It had a lot of variety. It had your shooting games, it had your racing games, it had online games. It had platformers. Sound Shapes is a great game. I played that on my Vita. I don't think it's worthy of D tier, but it certainly is not above C tier. It's a matter of figuring out where we want to place it. Is it better than the Wii U launch? I don't think it is. I mean, Knack is a really strong launch game, though. Was Knack's launch stronger than the few games that the Wii U had at launch? Man, it's so hard to compare these really terrible console launches to one another. It's not as hard to compare the really good ones, but the really bad ones, boy, it makes you think outside the box. So we have to weigh resistance. Okay, I think this is how we have to gauge this. Resistance versus Knack. Resistance, once again, a game I played for quite a while after the launch. So that carries some weight because of the online. Knack was sort of like a one and done, and you moved on. But was it better than my Wii U launch experience? This is tough. I don't know. What do you guys think? What would you do if you were in my shoes? A selection of smaller, less impactful games on the Wii U, or one banger of a game with Knack as a really solid launch? I'm gonna put it above the Wii U because I really love me a nice, fun, flawed 3D platformer for the launch of a console, and Knack gave that to me. So congrats, you beat the Wii U. All right, next up, we're moving on to the Xbox One. It's been a little bit since I've looked at the full launch lineup for the Xbox One. But let's go through it. It's got Angry Birds, Star Wars, Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag, Battlefield 4, Call of Duty Ghosts, Crimson Dragon. Keep that one in mind. Dead Rising 3, FIFA. Fighter Within, Forza Motorsport 5, Just Dance, Killer Instinct, Lego Marvel Super Heroes, Loco Cycle. Kind of forgot it launched with that one. Oh, man, I forgot that they were trying to launch this thing with, like, Kinect stuff. Oh, my goodness. Madden, NBA, Need for Speed Rivals, Power Star Golf. I don't even remember what that game is. Probably some Kinect game. Rise, Son of Rome, Skylanders Swap Force, Zoo Tycoon, and Zumba Fitness. Let's go through the games that I played and enjoyed for the launch. I picked this up on launch day. As I did, I forgot to mention the previous consoles, but let me just look through here just a quick. I bought Wii U on launch day. I bought PS4 on launch day. PS3 not long after. Wii launch day. Xbox not too long after. GameCube launch day. Dreamcast got that for Christmas. PS2 not too long after. It hadn't been out for a year yet. It was still launch window. 360 launch day. Xbox One I bought on launch day, and for the longest time I told myself that it was the worst console launch I had ever been a part of. But you know what? Looking back at this, and I look at games like Rise. Rise has really stood the test of time for me. That is one game that I think has aged really well. I went back and played it prior to the launch of the Series X to hype me up. Imagine hyping yourself up for the Series X with playing Rise Son of Rome. But I really do think Rise has stood the test of time as a really solid action game. It still looks amazing today. So I think that is a good quality of a launch game that looked really, really good for the time and still looks good today. I think if Rise came out today and you spruced it up just a little bit, I don't think people would even realize that this game came out back in 2013. I mean, that game looks great. I actually did buy Skylanders Swap Force. I guess because I was desperate. I was desperate for stuff to play on my X. I needed a reason to have bought the Xbox One. As sad as that sounds. So I got into Skylanders for the first time with Skylanders Swap Force, and some of you may know my history with Skylanders. Portal Master Pete. That's all I'm going to say. But I really got into Skylanders for quite some time. I was picking up the figures, I was making YouTube videos. I had a lot of fun with it, and I think, thinking back on this, yes, Swap Force was available on other platforms, but I did. Here's the thing, right? The only reason I got into Skylanders is because I was so desperate for something to play. I convinced myself that getting it on the Xbox One would somehow make me picking up an Xbox One feel more worth it. Maybe at the time it was like the slightly better graphical version of Skylanders, but at the end of the day, the Xbox One was the reason I tried Skylanders and actually kind of really enjoyed Swap Force and then never played a Skylanders game ever again. So I will give it a point for that. I really did not like the fact that this thing was still trying to incorporate Kinect at this point. Killer Instinct, though, is a game that I played a little bit when the console came out, and I went back and played it. I did a YouTube video on it, a year or two ago, whatever it was, going back trying to get into fighting games, and I tried Killer Instinct, and actually, the game still holds up. It's still a great game, and I think having a game like Killer Instinct at the launch, even if it was digital only, was uh, a really great launch game, and I think once again the Xbox One deserves a point just for that. And launching with a Forza Motorsport game, I mean that's a pretty big deal. People love the Forza series; they're good racing games. Dead Rising 3, while people may not hold that in the highest regard, I mean it was a Dead Rising game at the launch of the Xbox, which was kind of hey, that's a point. Crimson Dragon was my most anticipated Xbox One launch game. I actually played this game at PAX about I don't know how long before it came out, but originally Crimson Dragon was supposed to be a Kinect exclusive game. You had to play the game with Kinect and you'd be like waving your arms back and forth. I played it in Kinect. It was horrible, nearly unplayable. And thankfully they delayed it, or they didn't delay it, but they I guess the feedback was so poor that they actually made it so that you can absolutely just play the game with a controller. It's essentially Panzer Dragoon that had online multiplayer, and I had some fun with it. I played it for a decent amount of time. Believe it or not, people still play this game. The last time I logged into my Series X and I think I popped onto this game, they were still some people still play this game, which is kind of crazy. But now that I sit here and I look at this list, I really don't think I hold the Xbox One. I still highly disliked the Xbox One launch, but I don't think I hold it to such low standards anymore, looking at the full picture here and the memories of Skylanders and Rise and even Crimson Dragon for that matter. So it is a matter of where do we place it. Um, Xbox One. Is it worse than the Wii U? This is tough. So Wii U is tank, tank, tank. I'm going to make a change here. I never thought I would do this, but man, I'm really... Wii U had Mario. Does Mario beat out Rise? I'm really not a fan of New Super Mario Brothers. I'm not going to lie to you guys right now. I am battling if I actually want to put the Xbox One in front of the Wii U and bump the Wii U down the D tier. I am contemplating. But you know what? The Xbox Series X is still a thing. I think for now. Rise was a good launch game. It was a good launch game. And it had a couple of pretty solid titles with Killer Instincts. Even Dead Rising 3 was, I'm putting the Xbox One in front of the Wii U. For the longest time, I actually always regarded the Xbox One as the worst console launch for me. And looking back on it, you know what? I think I like it a bit more than the Wii U. Interesting turn of events. But is it better than the PS4 or the PS3? PS4, so it's Knack versus Rise. Oh man, who would have ever thought we'd see this day? Knack versus Rise. I love my 3D platformers. Hmm. Knack versus Rise. Rise versus Resistance? No, I think the PS3. I enjoyed the PS3. I had Ridge Racer. Ridge Racer's got to keep this bump down. Oh man. No, I think Knack will win out for now. Yeah. I think Knack will win out for now. All right. Let's move on to the next one. We can always move this around last minute. Change of heart. Oh boy, the Xbox Series X and the S. So we had Assassin's Creed Valhalla. This is something I picked up on day one. Borderlands 3, Bright Memory, Dead by Daylight, Devil May Cry 5, Dirt 5, Enlisted, Evergate, The Falconeer, Fortnite, Forza Horizon 4, Gears 5, Gears Tactics, blah, 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 blah. So much fluff here, so much fluff. No Man's Sky, Observer System, Redux, Overcooked. Like, where are the exclusives? Where are the games that you would buy this thing for on day one? Rogue Company, Sea of Thieves. Wait. Sea of Thieves was launch? Oh, anyway. Space Lords, Tetris Effect, The Tourist, Warhammer, Watch. Oh my god, I'm having PTSD just looking at this list right now. Guys, without a doubt, this was the worst console launch. Like, just straight to D tier. This was by far the most disappointing console launch. However, the backwards compatibility was huge. The first thing I did when I got my Series X was pop in Lost Odyssey to check how fast the load times were, and it was really good. I was super impressed. Sonic Unleashed. Oh man, this actually makes me reconsider because it's almost like the relaunching of the 360 in the way, but in a different sort of way. It's like, okay, now you can play your 360 games and new fidelity and new loading times. But oh man, we're going based off the games, right? Like the launch experience. And oh my goodness, looking back at this, I was just interested in none of. I played the Falconeer, and even that disappointed me. Um, Forza Horizon 4, I think I played that just because I was so desperate to grasp on to something to play. I did eventually play Observer years later. That was a pretty good game. I enjoyed that. Interesting survival horror, or not survival horror, but horror game. But it's not going to carry a launch of this thing. Was Sea of Thieves really? I don't even remember that being a launch game. Was that really launched November 10th? I guess we have to believe it, right? Let me see. Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves launch day. Date. 2018. Oh, okay. Right. So it was Xbox One. So it was ready for the launch day of. That's why I was confused. It was ready for the launch day of the Series X. I'm like, I don't remember that being a launch game for Series X. I never got into Sea of Thieves. I'm not a big pirate person. Tetris Effect. I think the biggest thing that I enjoyed the most was Yakuza Like a Dragon. I did pick that up and play that. That was definitely the best thing by far for the launch. Just having a turn-based RPG, and it was pretty fun. The game was a little too easy for my taste, though. I kind of lost interest eventually. But yeah, no. Looking at this, the backwards compatibility can't save it. This was one of the most underwhelming launch lineups for me personally. Maybe you found something in here that made this a little bit better, but Series X, D tier. First game in the D tier list, and I'm not changing my mind on that one. Okay, moving on to the PS5, we had Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Astro's Playroom, Borderlands 3, Bugsnax, Call of Duty Dead by Daylight, Demon Souls Remake, Devil May Cry 5, Dirt 5, Fortnite, Godfall. Remember when Godfall was a PS5 exclusive and then the game sold so poorly they had to downport it to the PS4? Green Fighter, King Audible, Man Eater, Spider-Man, Miles Morales, Remastered, No Man's Sky, NBA, Observer, Overcooked, The Pathless, Planet Coaster, Poker Club. Oh, that's right. Sackboy was a launch game. Okay. So here's the thing. Astra, remember I mentioned I love a nice, amazing 3D platform for the launch of a console. Well, Astra's Playroom was more than amazing. I mean, this game was perfect for the launch of a new console. It demonstrated the graphical prowess of the PS5. It demonstrated the DualSense with the vibrations and the rumble and the haptic triggers. Astra's Playroom absolutely carried the PS5 launch, and it's still probably like one of my favorite, if not favorite, PS5 game that I've played. That game carried the PS5 launch really hard for me. I got into speedrunning the game, both the full game and the challenge missions. Like, I was really in the Astra's Playroom, and I loved it. Demon Souls, fantastic game to launch with for the PS5, right? Who didn't want to play Demon Souls with those amazing updated graphics? Even Godfall I had fun with. I played it, a bit, not a lot, but I put in a couple dozen hours into Godfall. I thought it was a fun, like I said, I like launch games it's okay if they're a little flawed, as long as it's something just to kind of excite you, something different. Even if it felt like it was a generation or two old, just with new graphics. I enjoyed Godfall. I thought it was a fun launch game for what it was. And Sackboy: A Big Adventure was a fun launch game too. another 3D platformer, and I think I got to give the PS5 some credit for that. So it's going to be really interesting to see where I want to put this. It absolutely is better than the PS3. Astro went so far for me for the launch. I think I've actually got to put it above the Xbox and the Wii. Yeah, I mean, Astro has got to take this beyond. But is it better than the GameCube? Man, I don't think it is. That GameCube launch was so magical with the quad combo of Wave Race, Star Wars, uh, Luigi's Mansion, and Super Monkey Ball. So PS5, I'm putting this way higher than I thought I was going to be honest with you. But I love my 3D platformers. Is it A tier though? Is it? Let's take one last look at this. Is this A tier? It had a big variety. Of course, a lot of these are multi-platform. Demon Souls, Godfall, Sackboy, and Astro's Playroom. 4 solid, in my opinion, launch games for me. Even just Demon Souls and Astro. I think it's A tier. And that's the fun thing about this tier list. Before doing this video, I really did not think I would put PS5 in the A tier. But looking at this, I think it's got to be A tier. Low A tier, below the GameCube. All right, I think that... Oh, we still got the Switch. Let's not forget the Switch. Oh, apparently this list is a little out of date, so I got to do a quick Google search to remind myself. Switch US launch games. It wasn't that impressive, I'll tell you that much. All right, so I got to read this one off to you guys. We had 1-2 Switch, Just Dance 2017, Zelda Breath of the Wild, Skylanders Imaginators, Super Bomberman R, I Am Setsuna digitally, Snipper Clips, Shovel Knight again, and Fast RMX, which was digital. Wow, was the Switch US launch lacking. I think the Switch 2 will easily destroy this for a launch lineup, let me tell you. Like, that's why I'm so excited for the Switch 2, because I truly believe it, just with Mario Kart 9 alone, it's going to blow away the Switch launch. So, Breath of the Wild, I mean, yeah, that was a big deal. Breath of the Wild super, super hard carries the launch, right? But was it something... I'm just trying to see if I can find a better list that I can show you guys. Yeah, I can't really show this one. It's just so hard to look at. It was on Wii U, right? So it's not like it was something... Oh, I lost the list. Okay, I accidentally closed it. It's not like it was something that you had to get a Switch to play. So between that and Bomberman, I mean, the Switch launch was... Oof, man. It was exciting to, yes, have it, the whole, like, Joy-Con thing and portable versus docked. I mean, it was an exciting console to get your hands on. And Breath of the Wild was amazing to play, but it's like, it wasn't like you knew in the back of your mind you were playing something that you did not have to own a Switch for. And Super Bomberman R, I think I actually had, a decent amount of fun with, but it wasn't a very good Bomberman game to play online, especially compared to Bomberman Live Arcade on Xbox 360. The Switch launch was bad. I think at this point, the only reason I'm going to put it up there is because it was a new fun gimmick in terms of the Joy-Cons and the console, like the handheld console kind of viability of it. Was it better than the Series X? Absolutely. But you got to give it some credit for having a Zelda game at launch, right? Like, it was fun. Breath of the Wild was an amazing game to play. But that was all it had, and you could have played it on the Wii U. Man, this is a tough one. Is this something that finally cracks the PS3? Does it crack Resistance and Ridge Racer 7 with Zelda? Oh, man. It's definitely better than the Wii U. It's definitely better than the Xbox One. Or is it? Let me bring up this list that I closed by mistake again. Switch US launch games. Here, I'll show you. I'll bring it over. It's IGN's list, but the list is just like so hard to look at. Okay, my PC is like getting mad that I'm trying to drag this window over right now. All right, 1-2 Switch, Just Dance 2017, Zelda, Skylanders, Imaginators, just so. Oh, it did. That's right. I Am Setsuna was. You can't count out I Am Setsuna. Okay, here you go. Here's the list. I Am Setsuna was a decent little RPG, even if you had to get it digitally. Shovel Knight, Fast RMX. I mean, Fast RMX was okay, but it's not something that's going to really carry a console launch. Man, looking at this list makes you really. Look at the Japanese launch. It wasn't much better. It's funny how they get so many RPGs, actually. No, never mind. Theirs is way better. Wait, confirm launch window titles. Yeah, but none of these were day one, right? Let me make sure. Is this list accurate? Switch US Day 1 launch games. It's bringing me to that IGN article again. Okay, here's another article. 1-2 Switch, Zelda, Skylanders, Just Dance, Bomberman, World of Goo, Little Inferno, Human Resource Machine. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then launch window games. Wait, Blaster Master Zero. Okay, yeah, no, this is that had to be accurate. That was it. Wow, that's surprising. I don't remember the Switch launch being this bare bones. Getting a Bomberman for a launch of a console was kind of cool, even if it wasn't the best. This might be the hardest one to place yet. Zelda carries weight. I think a Zelda game has got to be above Rise. Is it above Resistance? The only reason it's hard for me to put it past Resistance is because I really liked Resistance, and I played it for quite some time. There wasn't really anything from the Switch launch that I like stuck with, right? So, but it was exciting to stream it and share my experience with everybody else, even if it was a bit of a brief launch excitement period. But is the original Xbox? Hold on, I'm reconsidering things here. Is the original Xbox? Are the games that were on there better? No, I mean Halo. Yeah, Halo's got to beat out. That alone was such a huge deal. Even if I wasn't the biggest Halo fan, you got to give credit to Halo. And it was exclusive. Oh, this is so tough. Breath of the Wild, how much weight should it carry also being on the Wii U? I did enjoy Breath of the Wild, at least for the like opening hours. It was a phenomenal. You know what? I completely forgot. This just came to my mind now. I completely forgot that I was almost ready to call Breath of the Wild like my potential new favorite game of all time. And then I played a little bit more, and I wasn't the biggest fan of some of the way they handled the dungeons, the trial dungeons. I don't even remember the names of them, and I did start to lose some of the luster. I think for that reason alone, I'm putting this in B tier. Yes, Breath of the Wild was on Wii U, but it was exciting to play it on a new console. The quote unquote best way to play it, I guess, at the time. So I think I'm gonna high C tier. Low B tier for now. We might change our mind. We're putting a low B tier. All right, that moves us on to handhelds. That was harder than I thought it was going to be. Thank you for those of you sticking around, by the way. I know I'm over an hour, almost about to be over an hour into this video, so I hope you enjoy the process. I didn't want to do any edits, any cuts. I wanted to let you see what goes through my mind as I'm going through making this tier list. And be sure to leave, if you've made it this far into the video, I appreciate it. Be sure to leave a like on the video too to let me know that you guys appreciate this long form, unedited format. And, I might do more stuff like this in the future. More tier lists. I'm having a lot of fun with tier lists. It's my first time doing it. I am quite enjoying it. I'm taking it way more serious than I probably should be, though. Okay, so the first one, 6th generation Game Boy Advance for, a lot of Japanese launch games. For the US, we had Army Men Advance, Castlevania Circle of the Moon, and I did pick up a Game Boy Advance at launch. Choo Choo Rocket, Earthworm Jim, Fire Pro Wrestling, GT Advance, Iridion 3D, Konami Crazy Racers, Namco Museum, Kinobi, Pitfall, Rayman Advance, Ready to Rumble, Boxing, Super Dodgeball, Super Mario Advance, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. So my Game Boy Advance launch was pretty interesting. The first game I bought was actually Rayman Advance, and then I was like, okay, this is Rayman, that's cool, it looks nice and everything. And then I eventually traded it for Radeon 3D, and then, over time I'd pick up stuff like Castlevania, which was really dark on that screen. Um, of course, Super Mario Advance. I didn't have, an incredible time with the Game Boy Advance launch for the launch lineup. I enjoyed what I played, but it wasn't like mind blowing. I think we got to give it a lot of credit for having a Castlevania game at launch. Iridion 3D was like a visual showcase kind of game, not an amazing game, but visually really cool. Having a new way to play Mario on Game Boy Advance was, a highlight for a lot of people. And I always give Nintendo launches a few extra points when they launch with a high profile game like Mario. For me, though, it was a good launch, but it wasn't an amazing console launch. There were a lot of games I didn't play around launch that some people may have. Like, I don't think I played Tony Hawk. I didn't play Ready to Rumble. I didn't play. It took me a while to play Pinobi. Um, yeah, I mean, it was a good console launch. It wasn't one of my favorite. It wasn't one of my most amazing favorite console launches. It's definitely above the Series X. It's definitely above the Wii U. Mario, Castlevania, Iridion have got to carry this thing a bit. Is it above Breath of the Wild? But you know what? The magical thing about the Game Boy Advance was the upgrade of going from Game Boy Color to Game Boy Advance and seeing these graphics on the handheld were extremely impressive at the time. Extremely impressive. Seeing these graphics on this handheld was mind blowing for the time. So I think I'm actually going to put it above the Switch just because the overall package of just that small selection of varied games being pretty solid, I think outweighs the one singular game for the Switch launch. So I think it feels pretty good here for now in the B tier. The N-Gage. So here's the thing about the N-Gage. I did not have the N-Gage for launch, but I was very familiar with the N-Gage at launch. I remember checking out the demo units for it when they had it in like the game stores, and I did pick it up several years later when I started getting into game collecting a bit more. I was gifted an N-Gage game for Secret Santa back in the very early days of digital press. Someone sent me a copy of was it Tomb Raider? It was either Tomb Raider or Pandemonium. And I really fell in love with it. And I was like, man, I'm going to get into the N-Gage. So I did get into the N-Gage a few years later, but I have had experience with a ton of these games, launch lineup games here, and the N-Gage in general. So it's a little bit cheating slipping the N-Gage in here because it is one that I didn't technically play in like the initial launch window, but I wanted to put it in here as a little black horse. And I actually always thought that the US launch lineup was a little bit more robust than this. But over time, man, the N-Gage really had such a lineup of different games. Well, let's take a look here. Impressively, it had Pandemonium, which is a port of the PS1 game, Puyo Pop, so, like Puyo Puyo, Puzzle Bobble Versus, so you had a couple puzzle games, you had a platformer, Sonic N, getting a not so easy to play Sonic game on the N-Gage with the way that the screen was orientated was, hey, it was something. Super Monkey Ball, which I did play, and it was a pretty playable version of Monkey Ball. Getting Tomb Raider, which was by far the highlight of the launch of N-Gage, was visually crazy. Like, it looked amazing, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. So I think it deserves a lot of credit because, I mean, look at this. The Game Boy Advance released in the US in 2001, and then the N-Gage a couple years later, but we had for the first time, like, actually very impressive 3D. It was like having slightly worse looking PS1 games in the palm of your hand. And I was always really impressed by that. And if you look at the spread of games, I mean, Tomb Raider, Monkey Ball, Sonic, Puyo, Puzzle Bobble, and Pandemonium, that's a pretty solid lineup of games. Oh, sorry, that's the European launch. Pandemonium, Puyo, or is it the same thing here? Pretty much the same thing. Yeah, the only thing they didn't get over in Europe was Tony Hawk. And we had Tony Hawk. That's a pretty solid lineup. And I just wanted to give the N-Gage a little bit of credit here because it is technically part of the sixth generation and it is a console I'm pretty familiar with. So it's a little hard for me to rate this one fairly because, like I said, I wasn't there from day one or like within the first year. But man, you got to admit, the selection of games was pretty good. Um, I just wanted to give this thing a bit of credit. I'm gonna put it at the end of C tier, but I kind of, but then again, if I, I played these games. If I had played these games when the N-Gage first came out, I think I would have really enjoyed it. I think it really deserves to be in the middle of C tier. I think the N-Gage deserves a little bit of love and appreciation for a pretty solid little lineup of games. All right, we're moving on to the 7th generation with the DS. In the US, we had Asphalt. I was a big fan of Asphalt, really fun arcade racer at the time that eventually evolved into some crazy kind of mobile free-to-play series. Field of Magic, which one of my biggest regrets was not getting Field of Magic for the DS launch. I looked at it and I was like, what is this? And I passed on it. But I played it years later, and man, what a fantastically weird game. I really regret not playing that for the launch. Madden, the demo for Metroid Prime Hunters, which you all know, you played that game quite a bit. I played a lot of it. I don't know about you, but I got a lot of mileage out of that Metroid Prime Hunters demo. Spider-Man 2, which I played and loved. I actually thought this game was great as a side-scrolling platformer. It didn't use the DS to its full capabilities, but it was, it was a pretty solid launch game. I think it cost $40 though, which I thought was way too much. And the herbs, whatever, didn't touch that one. But the cream of the crop was playing Mario Brothers or Super Mario 64 DS. And that just made the DS launch so memorable for me. Being able to play Mario 64 in the palm of my hands, I was like, man, how can handheld gaming get any better than this? I mean, this is fantastic. Look at what I'm playing in a portable. And that really carried the DS launch for me. Without Mario, the DS launch would have been quite disappointing. Asphalt had a lot of fun with. I had fun with the Metroid demo, and I had as much fun as I could with Spider-Man 2. But that Mario 64 launching, and I used the little thumb pad that some of you may not know, but the strap that came with the DS had a little plastic knob on the end of it. You were actually supposed to take that and like put it on the end of your thumb, and if you put it on the touchscreen and roll your thumb around, it actually acted as an analog controller. So I know a lot of people struggled to play Mario 64 on DS, but I didn't because I knew that little trick and it actually worked really well. So Mario 64 on DS is really gonna carry this experience, and I just so happen to like a couple of the other launch games. Was it better than the Game Boy Advance for me? Yes. Was it better than my Xbox experience with, renting Halo and everything? Yeah. Was it better than the excitement of the Wii launch with a bunch of fun new toys to fiddle around with? I think it was. I actually think it was. Because not only just Mario 64, but the gimmick of the DS was a lot of fun with the touchscreen and the microphone and the dual screens. I mean, this thing was pretty exciting to have on the launch. I was definitely into it. Was it better than Astro's Playroom? Absolutely not. Is it worthy of A tier? No. But I think it is worthy of being the highest placement in my B tier. All right. PlayStation Portable, PSP. US launch, we had Ape Escape. That's a great game to launch with, right? Darkstalkers, cool. Some good selection here. Dynasty Warriors. I don't think I ever played the Dynasty Warriors game on PSP. Gretzky, Luminous. Metal Gear Acid, NBA, Need for Speed Underground Rivals, NFL Street Unleashed, Ridge Racer, Spider-Man 2, Tony Hawk's Underground, Twisted Metal Head On, applied directly to the forehead, Untold Legends, Brotherhood of the Blade, Wipeout Pure. Man, the PSP launch was another solid launch. I was there. The DS I was there day one. I had that thing day one. PSP I also got day one. Ooh, this is going to be an interesting one to play. So let's go through the games that I really enjoyed and played early on, at least. Luminous. Hard carries the PSP launch for me. Luminous is, the more and more I think about it, absolutely my favorite puzzle game, probably ever. If I really had to think about it. One of my favorite launch games of all time on any console. I mean, I was really into Luminous. They called it like the Luminous effect, like they have the Tetris effect, where if you played a lot of Luminous, you know what I'm talking about. You'd play the game and then you'd try and go to sleep and you would literally see the luminous blocks in your head trying to go to sleep making combos. Like, I suffered from that for however long I was playing Luminous. I literally could not get this game out of my mind. That's how much I was involved and invested in that game. Such an amazing puzzle game. It's the one with the 4x4 boxes where like the music is integrated in the background and like everything you do plays with the music. It was, first of all, amazing looking, amazing sounding. It just, what a game. I really enjoyed Ridge Racer. I really like Twisted Metal Head-On too. I mean, getting a Twisted Metal game, a Ridge Racer game, and a Wipeout game. I played Wipeout 2 and enjoyed it. I mean, this was a solid launch lineup. And some of the games, like, I either played at a later point, I didn't get day one, but like, just look at this: Ape Escape, Darkstalkers, Dynasty Warriors, a Metal Gear game. Even though it was a strategy game, I still have to play Metal Gear Acid. I've never played it. Back then I was really not in the Metal Gear, but now I'm more receptive to it, so I want to try it. Need for Speed, even Untold Legends, some people kind of enjoyed that as a dungeon crawler. This was a solid launch. Let's see where we're going to place this. Oh, this is going to be tough. All right, obviously this bypasses everything in B, C, and D tier. Is the overall experience of the PSP launch better than my experience playing Astro's Playroom? As much as I love Astro's Playroom, I will definitely put a giant, impressive launch lineup of games with the likes of Luminous, right? Don't forget, the reason why PS5 is so high up there is because Astro's was such a strong launch game. Well, guess what? Luminous is also a strong launch game, but it was supported by a bunch of other strong launch games. So I think for that reason alone, the PSP will be above the PS5. Is it better than the amazing 4-game launch lineup of the GameCube? That GameCube is a hard barrier to pass. Luminous. Can Luminous beat the quad combo of GameCube? I don't think it does. I don't think it does. I think it sits solidly between the GameCube and the PS5 with that strong presence of Luminous. But it doesn't quite beat out the 4 super solid games on the GameCube launch exclusives, right? Like, those GameCube games to me were all like 9 out of 10, potentially even 10 out of 10 kind of games. Luminous is a 10 out of 10 game, but the other games were not 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10. They were more like 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 kind of games. So I think that does bring it down a bit. But the PSP was, I just want to recognize how good of a launch that thing had. We're going to do a final evaluation as I go through this, by the way, so there might be some things that move around at the last minute, but for now, let's keep moving here as we are nearing the end. I didn't... Listen, I had the Gizmondo. I know this is a bit of a joke, but I did not get the... I mean, technically, though, here... Hold up. Hold the door. If I put the N-Gage on here, I should really technically have the Gizmondo on here. We're going to do it. I'm grabbing the image right now. Gizmondo. This is the surprise you get making it to the end of this video. I'm grabbing the image right now in real time. Here, perfect. Grab that one. Save. If the N-Gage is on here, the Gizmondo deserves to be on here as well. So let me add it in here. Boom, there it is. The surprise nobody ever saw coming. It's time to shake up the tier list. So I know a lot of you have no idea about the Gizmondo and the launch lineup games, but I've always joked about this. People thought I was joking, but I really wasn't joking. The Gizmondo has a super solid lineup of games, with the likes of Sticky Balls, Toy Golf, Trailblazer, Richard Burns Rally, Point of Destruction, Motocross 2005, and the Classic Compendiums. A lot of times when people would ask me what's my favorite game, like, what game library has the most solid lineup of games compared to the rest of the library? I always used to joke around that it was the Gizmondo. And I'm not completely trolling here. If you've played the Gizmondo, you know that these games, and there were more games than this, and I've played more games than this, but these were the launch games, and I've played a big majority of these games. They are solid. Trailblazers are really cool, like futuristic on rails, like dodging racing style kind of experience. Amazing visuals. Toy Golf, a very solid mini golf game that sort of like takes place in a like miniature style where you're on like tables. It's like a shrunken like Honey Shrunk the Kids kind of style mini golf. Sticky Balls. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's actually an amazing puzzle game that has some pretty slick visuals, and it's just like you have to use a you have to stick the balls together, similar colors. It's an interesting puzzle game. Okay, trust me on this one. Richard Burns Rally. That, if I remember right, that was a pretty okay racing game. Motocross Gizmondo was also pretty solid. Those are pretty solid games. Point of Destruction, which was like a Geometry Wars style game. It was, and then Classic Compendium, which is like a bunch, some board games and stuff. Nothing crazy with those, but it is a solid selection of launch games, and I've played a majority of these. And even though I didn't get my Gizmondo until years later, a little bit cheating here, I know, I am gonna put it on here. But where is it gonna go? Is it gonna go above the N-Gage? Man, that is an interesting one. I think it's gonna sit. As much as I would love to troll and put this thing, up here, obviously it's not beating the GameCube. Obviously, it's like, it's not beating Mario 64. I think it's going to sit right next to the N-Gage somewhere. Like, I have to imagine myself, if I bought the Gizmondo, knowing what I do now about these games, and I picked up a few of these games, and I enjoyed them all, would I have been happy with the Gizmondo at launch? Would I have been optimistic and hopeful for the future of the Gizmondo? I would have. It actually would have been pretty exciting. Do these games combine together to beat out Knack as a launch game experience? No. Does it beat out something like playing Tomb Raider in the palm of your hand? I don't think it does either, because strong IPs like Sonic, Tomb Raider, Tony Hawk, that will always beat out some random games that are just kind of like you've never heard of them before. But the Gizmondo is a better. I mean, is it better than Rise? Well, here's the thing. I was disappointed by the Xbox One launch, but if I had played these games at the launch of the Gizmondo, I would not have been disappointed. I would have been pretty happy with them. So I think for that reason alone, the Gizmondo is going above the Wii U. The Wii U and the Xbox One. I'm sorry, Wii U and Xbox One. I had to do it to you. All right, we're moving into the 8th generation of handhelds. With the 3DS, the US launch, pretty robust. Asphalt making a return. It's pretty impressive how we had Asphalt and Rayman for the launch of the DS, and we have Asphalt and Rayman back for the launch of the 3DS. So we had Asphalt 3D, which I played and enjoyed. AR games, Space Raiders, Lego Star Wars, Nintendogs plus Cats, Pilot Rings Resort, Pro Evolution Soccer, Puzzle Swap, Rayman 3D, Ridge Racer 3D, Samurai Warriors, Street Pass, Monkey Ball 3D, Street Fighter, The Sims, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Shadow Wars. So noticeably the 3DS launch was lacking Mario. And it does make a difference, right? It's very noticeable. It was kind of like a hodgepodge of all different weird games kind of coming out. I had launchitis for the 3DS. I'm sure some of you may remember my old video with 3DS. I was waiting in line out at like the official event that they held in New York City with Reggie there and everything. And they had demo stations set up that you can play these games before the launch as you're waiting out in the freezing cold. And I had launchitis. I bought some games I wouldn't have otherwise, like Nintendogs plus Cats. I played the demo. I was like, this looks cool. I bought it. Some of you may also remember the video I did about some of the biggest gaming pickups regrets I ever did, and that game was on there. It was a product of launchitis. Same thing with Street Fighter. I wasn't super into Street Fighter, but I got it anyway kind of thing. Hey, we've been there. We've all had launchitis before. But the 3DS launch, did they have, were there digital games? So we had, that was the European launch. I'm so sorry. I read the European launch instead of the US. US also had Bust-A-Move Universe, Combat of Giants, Find Me, anything else different here? Oh, Steel Diver. I completely forgot about Steel Diver. Wow, didn't get that in Europe. I was going to say, I don't remember getting 2 Ghost Recon games, or Splinter Cell. So there was a little bit of a difference, mostly the same though, with the addition of Steel Diver. Virtual console games. Was there anything notable in here? No, not really. It was very exciting to play these games in 3D, right? Even though they weren't the best games, you'll never forget the first time turning on Pilot Wings Resort or Steel Diver or even Rayman 3D. Playing with that 3D gimmick was a highlight, and I do think the gimmick of the 3DS really heightened the launch of this thing. It turned mediocre, ordinary games into something much more special, and it made it way more exciting to play. So for me personally, the games I played, and some of these I actually did reviews on, I did a review on like Bust a Move Universe, right? I don't even remember doing the review on that game, but I did. I played and loved Asphalt 3D, Bust a Move, Pilot Wings Resort, definitely like the highlight of the launch. Just a beautiful game, amazing use of the 3D. Rayman 3D was just nice to have a 3D platformer at launch, even though it was like a reiteration of what we had already played. Ridge Racer 3D, not going to argue with that. Love my Ridge Racer. Steel Diver, I enjoyed. It was like a one-trick kind of pony thing. Like, I don't think that game deserved it. I think it was like $40, right? It was pretty expensive. It was something that you played for a few hours and then you were done with it. I never really went back to it, but it was impressive. Like, I liked the 3D. The depth in that game was like, wow, this is cool. It's not like the most fun game, but I like the visuals. I had fun with Monkey Ball 3D. That looked great in 3D. Street Fighter looked good, even though it wasn't like my favorite game. Oh, and the highlight of one of the highlights was Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Shadow Wars. I still recommend that game today as one of the best 3DS games that you maybe never played. It's just a great XCOM style strategy game that I think a lot of people passed on, and I still recommend you go check it out now. It's really fun. So I think just having a bunch of like 7 out of 10 style games with the 3D gimmick really elevates the 3DS launch for me higher than I may have been anticipating. It absolutely, I think, was way more fun and memorable than the DS launch. I really do think it was. Yes, the DS launch was memorable, but the game selection was bare bones, and Mario 64, hey, while it's a great game, it is something that we've all played before. And I really think the 3D gimmick, I'm not saying this is the final placement here, we'll think about this. It's going to be in the A tier. The question is, was it better than the PSP? Was it better than Luminous as an experience? Was it better than PS5? Was it better than Astro's Playroom? Yes, I think the overall picture of just that super fun 3D gimmick outweighs Astro's Playroom, which at the end of the day was just a really good tech demo for the PS5. 3DS at this point is going to be battling against the PSP and Luminous. The 3DS I don't think had a game on the level of Luminous, right? Luminous 10 out of 10. I don't think there were any 10 out of 10 launch games for the 3DS for me personally. But man, what a good time it was waiting out in line to get that console. Doing my YouTube videos. Heck, I even was like streaming this thing. Like very early stream days, the best I could, if I remember right, like early Justin TV days. It was a fun console launch. I really liked the launch for this thing, and I think for that reason it will beat out the PSP. Does it tackle the GameCube? However, does it take down the GameCube? Man, it comes down to 4 really good games versus a bunch of good but not really good games. And that 3D gimmick experience. Man, there's just something so magical about that GameCube launch. It's just so hard for me to want to knock it down. Let me take one last look. I don't think it does it. I don't think it takes down the GameCube. The GameCube is still standing strong. It is still standing strong. I mean, man, we might have to do some reconsidering here. Stay tuned to the end of the video. We might see some shifts here that were unexpected. But you got one more to go here, and that is the Vita. The US launch. Wow, that's a lot of games. Pretty impressive lineup. I bought the Vita at launch. I actually got the 3G version thing where you can get it like a week early, and it came with that Little Deviants game. I'm going to be honest, I never even played the Little Deviants game. I never used the 3G. I only bought that kit just so I can play it a week early. It is what it is. So in the US, we had Army Corps of Hell, which I did enjoy. It was a decent little launch strategy game. It's like Pikmin in Hell, essentially. Asphalt Injection. I love my Asphalt games. I played that as well. Listen, I love a good arcadey racer. and I did not mind those being a staple for launch experiences. Maybe we'll see a launch game for the Switch too. Augmented reality games: Ben 10, Blaze Blue, Dungeon Hunter Alliance. I played quite a bit of Dungeon Hunter Alliance. I actually did a review on that game. I got a lot of views. It was actually a very popular review I did back in the day. And it was like a Diablo style hack and slash game that I played quite a bit. It was a fun launch game. Dynasty Warriors next. I think I avoided that one. Escape Plan, F1, FIFA, Hot Shots Golf, Hustle Kings, Little Deviants. Luminous. However, this Luminous was nowhere near as good as the original Luminous. Just the addition of the back touchscreen stuff was very unnecessary, and the songs weren't as good. It was a good launch game, but not 10 out of 10 quality. Michael Jackson, Mod Nation Racers. I was never in the Mod Nation Racers. I struggled so hard to get into that. It wasn't for me. Ninja Gaiden, Plants vs. Zombies, Rayman Origins, Shinobi-Do 2. Wish I would have got that one at launch. I was so on the fence about it, but I never struck a chord with me. I never picked it up. Super Stardust Delta. That was a fun game. Tales from Space, Mutant Blob Attack. That is a digital game I picked up and played. Touch My Katamari, which was a sleeper for the launch. I actually really thought Touch My Katamari was a fantastic launch game. Especially it was one of the few games that used the back touch in a unique, fun way with like stretching the Katamari. It's a different way to play it. Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Uncharted Golden Abyss, and Wipeout 2048. Very solid launch lineup for the Vita. So the ones, in my opinion, that really stand out from the crowd here, that really make up the bulk of the launch, for me would have been Army Corps, Asphalt, Dungeon Hunter Alliance, Luminous, and Super Stardust Delta, Touch My Katamari, Uncharted Golden Abyss, and Wipeout. This is really solid. Now, of course, the number one game here is Uncharted. Uncharted Golden Abyss was by far like the game you bought a Vita for at the launch. The game was a stunner. It looked amazing. Still looks amazing. Still plays amazing. I'm not quite as into Uncharted now as I was back then. I'm still a fan of the series, but I mean, it was really special to play an Uncharted game in the palm of your hands that played as good as that game did. And I think paired with games like Touch My Katamari and Wipeout, I had a lot of fun with, even though I'm not like big into that series, and Luminous. The launch lineup was solid for the Vita. I would hold Uncharted not nearly as high as the standards of Luminous on PSP, but the selection of games, overall selection of games for the Vita, and just how good that thing looked at launch. I mean, these games were crisp. You know that OLED screen. I mean, that thing looked fantastic. It's gotta be up in A tier for sure. Does it beat out Luminous? I think it does. Look how big the Vita is with the picture I chose here. But does it beat out the 3DS? Ooh, this is going to be a contentious one. This is going to be contentious. Let's just remind ourselves. So the Vita versus the 3DS. The 3DS, it's essentially like Pilot Wings going up against Uncharted. The 3D gimmick versus just having an amazing looking selection of games in the palm of your hand. I mean, this thing was cutting edge visually when it came out. I really enjoyed the Vita launch. I was making videos, making reviews. I was streaming this thing, like when no one else was streaming this thing, taking a webcam, just like pointing it at my Vita and streaming. I loved my Vita for the launch, and of course after. But I loved the Vita, and I loved the Vita launch. And I think I'm actually going to put it ahead of the 3DS. And you know what, guys? I know it's been sitting here the whole video in the A tier, but it really made me think, because how many times I was comparing these other consoles to it and sort of holding this to the highest standard. I think I'm moving GameCube to S tier after the Dreamcast, because Dreamcast, it had 4 strong games as well. And for me personally, like getting Dreamcast Christmas morning with Sonic Adventure and getting Power Stone and House of the Dead not long ago. I mean, that was just such a magical moment. I think Dreamcast edges out the GameCube just slightly for me. But man, as much as I've been talking up this GameCube, I think it is deserving of S tier. Is Vita deserving of S tier itself? I really don't want to pollute S tier with too many things. I really want to hold it to the highest standard. And for that reason, I think ooh, man, this is close. Vita's got to be high A tier or low S tier. But now that we have everything up on the board here, let's do one final comb through. Is this the correct order? Is this really what I want it to be? I know this video is going on long, and I thank you guys for bearing with me. But I hope you enjoy the process. 360 as the best console launch ever. For me. I think so. I think for now, that is staying there at the top. That was just a console launch I will never forget for multiple reasons. The chaos of getting the console, waiting out in the cold, getting those amazing variety of launch games, playing on Xbox Live, doing the achievement. Oh, the achievements, I completely forgot about the achievements. That was another reason that the 360 launch was just so magical. And then the Xbox Live Arcade games. It has to be top tier. It has to be the number one. The PS2 selection of games is unmatched to this day. Nothing has come close to the variety, selection, exclusives. I think it sits firmly in second spot. The Dreamcast, Sonic Adventure, House of the Dead, Power Stone, one of my favorite fighting series ever. Power Stone 2, I do like it more than one, but Power Stone was an amazing game. Soul Calibur being that amazing rental, but I recognize the significance of Soul Calibur for the fighting game series. And other multiple games that were just great rentals for the Dreamcast launch. I think it feels right there. The GameCube, we've talked about them. Luigi's Mansion, Monkey Ball, Wave Race, and Rogue Squadron. Not counting a few other games, but those are the four that I always hold to the highest standard. I think it is deserving of that S tier based on those four games alone, and I always hold Nintendo to that standard. Since the GameCube, they have not matched that launch lineup. Maybe they will with the Switch too. The Vita. Let's think this through one more time. Uncharted, Luminous, Katamari, Asphalt. Let's bring up the list one more time. It's a lot to remember. US launch. Army Corps, which was, you got to really give credit to these games that are sort of like a 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 fun launch game experience, which would be Asphalt, which would be Army Corps, which were games like Dungeon Hunter. Even though I didn't personally play it, I recognize that this game made available games like Dynasty Warriors, Hot Shots Golf, a kart racer with Mod Nation Racers, Ninja Gaiden. Playing a Ninja Gaiden game with those graphics in the palm of your hand, that was a big deal. Rayman Origins, Shinobito, Touch My Katamari, Wipeout. That is solid. It is solid. Is it worthy of S tier? Oh man, I did enjoy so many games on there. I'm moving it to the end of S tier. For me, it's probably in between A and S tier, but man, just thinking back on just such a great launch lineup, I think it is worthy of S. 3DS is not worthy of S. It's staying in A. The 3D gimmick carries it hard, in my personal experience with the 3DS launch. PSP Luminous carrying it with a few other games in S and A. Astra's Playroom. Wait, wasn't Destruction All-Stars a launch game? Was that not totally in that list that we looked at? Destruction All-Stars release date PS5. Was this list incorrect for the PS5? February 2021. Was that actually after the release? PS5 US release date. Huh, wow. I completely forget. I always felt like Destruction All-Stars was for the launch, but that is right. It did come out a bit after. I think it was supposed to be for the launch, and then it wasn't. But it was worth the wait. I love Destruction All-Stars. If Destruction All-Stars was day one, this would have been different. I think this would have been a little bit higher up, believe it or not. But PS5, yeah, A. I still really enjoyed the launch of that with Astro. Astro carrying hard. B tier for the DS. High B tier. Mario 64 carrying the touchscreen dual screen gimmick, carrying hard, yep. Feels about right to put that above the Wii, which was like, mostly 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 kind of games. Halo carrying the Xbox. Feels about right. Yeah, this feels... It's a lot to like rack my brain through a launch game. Just to double check one more time. Switch, Zelda. I mean, it carried the Switch launch for a bit. Bottom of B tier. That sounds right. That sounds right. I don't think that's worthy of C tier. PS3 resistance, putting up the resistance, carrying hard carrying. Knack, good old Tomb Raider, Sonic on the N-Gage, sticky balls on the Gizmondo, beating out the Xbox One and Rise and Crimson Dragon. And Killer Instincts. You know what? Does that feel right? Killer Instinct was a great game, coming back to it all these years later. Rise was a good game. But the magic of Tomb Raider in your hand and Tony Hawk and Pandemonium. Side talking as a cell phone. I didn't use it as a cell phone. Rise, Crimson Dragon, Skylanders. No. I'm moving the Xbox One above the N-Gage and the Gizmondo. I don't think it deserves that amount of disrespect as much as I love these two consoles. The Wii U though, Nintendo Land deserves some credit. Tank, Mario Brothers, new Super Mario Brothers. I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of knowing what I know now about Gizmondo and N-Gage. If I had those day one, I know I would have loved the N-Gage for sure. Like Sonic and Tomb Raider alone, Monkey Ball alone would have been worth it. Sticky balls. Do sticky balls beat out the Wii U? Some solid games on the Gizmondo. It's a shame this thing deteriorates over time. The console literally deteriorates, like the rubber on the thing, like disintegrates, and the battery is irreplaceable. It just dies. I don't even think I could play my Gizmondo anymore. So this is pretty much like its eulogy here. Its last respects. Yeah, no, I think the Wii U is in the right spot, and the Series X, good riddance. Guys, that is going to be my tier list. This is the finalized list. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I hope you didn't mind the video being nearly an hour and 40 minutes. I appreciate you sticking all the way through. Leave a comment. What would your tier S consoles be? I'd be curious, most curious what your tier S launches would be, and your tier D. What would you put in the D tier? What would you put in the S tier? Let me know. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Don't forget to leave a like on the video if you haven't. It helps me out a lot, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. If you have any ideas for other tier lists you want me to do, leave a comment below as well.